You're listening to the Struggles We Grow From podcast.
We're Austin and Sydney Prince. Let's get into today's episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Struggles We Grow From podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sydney Prince, and I'm here with my husband,
Austin.
And we are so excited that you are back for another episode. If this is your first time listening to us, we are so happy that you're here and welcome. And let's jump into it. So
Just right off the bat. Okay.
First off, if you're listening on Spotify, there's a section where you can make a comment on this episode. And I'm just going to ask the question, what are you reading this week?
Yeah.
And if you would put down in the comments, like what book of the Bible you are currently working on. And if you're not working on one and you're not reading anything, make a decision right now. What you going to start reading, and go ahead and put it in the comments because I would love to know. And the reason why I'm asking that question is I had a very rough week. Are you going to amen?
No, I'm more self-aware than that.
You don't need to amen. You did a silent amen with your facial expression. So I was like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I finished Acts. And then I was like, okay, what's next? And I felt like I was like, you should read Job and study Job. Because I've heard many people reference Job, but I don't think, I've never heard anyone really preach through the book of Job. I've never studied it, really deep dive on my own. Yeah. Have read bits and pieces, but not the full thing. So reading Job, and I don't know, I was just in a bad mood about it. And then this whole week, I was struggling to read it. And then this whole week, when I first started reading it, I was literally asking you, I was like, I don't even understand why this is in the Bible. And the reason I said that is because you said, well, some people argue that it's more of just like a poem and not really there was this real man named Job. And then I was like, okay, well then why is this even in here if that's the case? But we don't really know that.
But I wasn't saying I agree with that. You know me. I just give you information. And
then you started an irritation. And so I was irritated. And so then I keep reading it. And then one day I was like, you know what I'm doing? I'm skipping the portions that his friends say to him. And I'm just finding those parts that Job speaks. And you're like, you can't do that. You got to read the whole thing. And I'm like, well, what's the point of reading them? And then you said, well, sometimes there will be people in our lives that speak things to us that seem like truth, but they're not. Literally, people in church, that's happened to you. Or let's take a look at the mirror of our own lives, and you can see some of the things the friends is saying to him because they don't even know what's going on. They don't know from heaven's viewpoint what is really happening to Job, and they're just casting judgment upon him, and they're saying all these things, and some of them sound like, yep, that could be right. What you're saying could be right, but you're so wrong because you literally have no idea what's really going on. And so anyway, it was like a look in the mirror check of, oh my gosh, I think I've said that to someone, or I've said that about someone going through a hard situation or whatever. But then this week I was struggling so much. I felt like I'm reading Job and I'm like, I feel like I'm not feeling the spirit when I'm reading this. And I was getting frustrated. And so then I went almost all week just not reading anything, just being real, not reading anything because it frustrated me so bad. And then you said, well, just find something, take a pause, find something different. And the kids and I, for our homeschool, we take a couple weeks at a time to memorize a verse. And the memory verse that's on the board right now, because Christmas is coming so soon, I was like, all right, let's go to Isaiah. And then we talked about prophets and what prophecy means, and the gift of prophecy, and not everyone has that, and blah, blah, blah. So we're talking about all that. And then we read in Isaiah, like, the child is to be born.
You're talking about the gift of prophecy to our children?
Yes, I did. I was like, not everybody's going to. Listen.
It's just funny how Pentecostal or
no. It's so foreign that people don't disciple their own kids. Let's really talk about that.
All right.
Like, it's quite evident. Anyway, so that's another thing. But so you were like, when's the last time you read a gospel? So anyway, long story. I was like, you know what? I should read Matthew, because then I took the kids and we looked at the 4 gospels and we were like, okay, which one of the gospels talks about Jesus's birth? And it's Matthew and Luke. And then we looked at, anyway, because those speak about the birth of Jesus, we're in Isaiah, and then we're going to go and we're going to read Matthew, and then we're going to read Luke, and we're going to talk about the differences between the two of them, because Luke is way more like in depth, more detail about it, and Matthew's not. So anyway, read a Matthew. And then I could not go to sleep last night. Because yesterday was a really hard day for me, and I did not read in the morning. It felt like everybody was against me when they really weren't. But when you are not in the Word, like I was not in the Word, and during the week, and you make all the excuses, and then you're not in it, and then you feel like everything is on top of you, and everybody's against you, and wham, me, and that's where I was. So then last night, Austin, which men, listen up, if your wife is having trouble getting into her word and she's not going to speak up, because I now speak up, but before I didn't do that, like help her have time, like take the kids, like do something, whatever. Anyway, so the kids are in bed and you're like, why don't you read now? Everybody's asleep. The baby is asleep. Everybody's in bed. It's quiet. Dogs are quiet. Everybody's quiet. It's dark. Okay. So we're in Matthew. So I'm reading Matthew chapter 1. Reading Matthew chapter 2, 3, 4. Okay. Not saying that none of this was so good. It was all good. So I just was like continuing to read. And, just the word repent just kept coming up and up and up. And then we get to chapter 5, and this might be embarrassing. Okay, so we start the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5. We talk about Sermon on the Mount all the time. Pastors, take portions of this a lot and preach on it, and we study it. So, so we're starting out with the Beatitudes. Okay. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Okay. So stopping right there. I'll be for real. Up until last night, and maybe some other people will feel me, when I would read like, blessed are the poor in spirit, like in my mind, I just imagined like, like, oh man, life's just horrible. Like people like that like are going through a hard time, and I've gone through hard times, and I've felt poor in spirit. But like last night it hit me. It was like, that is not what he's talking about. It's not what he's talking about. And then it was like, ding, and it was just so like, well, for those that, so what he's really talking about is understanding that we are so sinful, that we're poor in spirit because of our sin. Where he goes on next to say, like, those who mourn, you should mourn over sin and how sinful you are, and you should hate your sin and just cry over it. You know, like we do the things we don't want to do, and then we just like keep on doing them. Like, you should hate it. You should, like, that's how you should be. And then it hit me. It was like, okay, you know, Jesus tells us like to have faith like a child. And then I'm listening to the pastor we like to listen. He's like, he never said to have a adult. He never said to have faith like an adult. He said, have faith like a child. And we can argue and be like, well, we're supposed to grow. Yeah. And that just growing happens, but that has nothing to do with being humble. Like, little children know they don't know it all. And they look up to, you know, their parents, and they look up to adults in their life. Like, I want to learn from you. I want to know more. And that's what he's getting at. Like, this humility, like being humble. Like, we've never arrived. And I feel like me personally, like, I will sit in like groups, like over the years in life groups, and I have caught myself either saying, number one, like I know more than all y'all, or they know more than me. And like, it's like this, I don't know. I feel like in Christian culture with like, we lose that childlike faith, and we come at it as of like, I know more, and I'm way longer along in my faith than XYZ. And so then you get this like arrogance, and you lose the humility.
Yeah. If you need to go pee, then go pee. You know where the bathroom at. You can ask Bubby to walk down the hall with you. Listen, you'll get Andy's custard if you go. Go, both y'all. Anyways, she's going to be sassy and stand there for a minute before she goes, so that everybody on the podcast knows right now, we're dealing with a child who's a terrorist. She's a terrorist. Right now, she's holding us at P point to get what she wants.
I'm just going to walk her there.
Okay.
So you can it's right. Your show, and we're all just living in it.
All right. It's not as fun if you're not here. But so here's what I want to share with you guys. There's this one time when Sydney and I was dating, and I'm just kidding. She's gone. No, but I think she makes a really good point. Like, there's this humility in nature that's required. The phrase to have faith like a child represents a need to be dependent upon a father. It represents a need of never surpassing your father. It represents a need of always being drawn towards your father from a humble standpoint. Truthfully, when we think about it this way, there comes a time when we grow up. Like, I know it happened for me. I know it happened for Sydney. There comes a time when we grow up and we're no longer children, but we're adults, and we view our parents differently. I'm an adult. I'm grown up. I'm no longer a child. I've left those things behind. I've matured past my parents' teaching. I've matured past my parents' ideology. I have my own thoughts. I have my own opinions now. And we kind of champion that idea of like, hey, we're our own. That's not what Scripture is teaching. Scripture is teaching that you are humble like a child. You don't grow up and move out of God's house. You are continually His child. And that's what this passage represents. Humility, the poor in spirit. Hey, the poor in spirit. Anyways, the poor in spirit portion that you were talking about, man, that represents the humility to say, I am not self-sufficient.
Right. And not just that, but thirst for righteousness.
Yeah.
Like, when you're humble in that way and you're like, woe is me.
Yep.
I'm so sorry, God. And you are just heartbroken over your sin and over your situation, but you have to hunger for righteousness, and you want to hunger to become more like Jesus.
Yeah. I was I was using the analogy. Excuse you, bless you. I don't know what you do for a cough.
Just got some dry.
Anyways, while you were gone, I was referring to not referring to an analogy, but the reason why he says that we are to be like child, have faith like children, is because we don't grow up and move out of God's house. Like, just truthfully, we got to a point where we feel like we've surpassed our parents' teaching, or we're no longer under our children or our parents like we were when we were kids, or maybe even we might think we know more than our parents, or but that's not how it works in God's house. That's all I was saying, just so that you're clued in.
And that, like, we can all the time make excuses that sound really good as to why we shouldn't follow, like, Jesus' commands. Mm-hmm. Like Jesus' command to be in community. We can make a lot of excuses that sound really good. Yeah. We can make a lot of excuses as to why not to be poor in spirit.
Yep.
Or like you can make it sound so good in your head and you can just keep going along. But the reality is, like, Jesus and God command these things from us. But God could literally stop there. God could say, you know what, like you do, like we do with our kids sometimes. Hey, unload the dishwasher. Well, I don't want to unload the dishwasher. Well, you're going to unload the dishwasher because I have commanded it of you. Point blank. That's it.
You can do it happy or sad.
Yeah, you can do it this way or this way, but this is what you're doing. Like, but the reality behind all of that is God's like, well, that's goodness. Do you want to eat from a dirty fork?
Yeah.
In a dirty bowl? Do you want to do that? Or do you want to obey what I'm asking you to do and eat off with a clean fork?
For your benefit.
For your benefit. And then he goes a step further. It's not just like, okay, I'm going to command these things and therefore you're good, but it's for theirs is the kingdom. Like, he's literally giving us things in return because he knows this is going to lead to this. Like, we get to be in the kingdom of heaven, like God's kingdom, like God's children. We get to be comforted by him. We get to inherit the earth. We will be completely satisfied. And like sometimes I just sit on like a quiet day at home and I'm just sitting and there's just like still this uneasiness and like unrest within me. And I just sit there and I think about, like, it's so far off to think that there's like one day going to be the day where we don't ever have to feel that ever again.
Yeah.
Like, ever.
Yeah.
Like this struggle, this wrestle of like having to fight, and like there's not going to be that. And so it just seems so far. But anyway, it's just like, I think, anyway, like just the poor in spirit and those who mourn, hungering and thirsting for righteousness, being meek. Like we read the Beatitudes and I think we just kind of, we know that. Like, okay. But we really don't stop and be like, okay, what does, and breaking it down on like each one of those things. And for me, like those first top were just like, so, I don't know.
Yeah. And it's also common when we read the Beatitudes, we think that it's like a different person per each line. Like Jesus isn't talking about a different person.
They're meek and they're,
It's one phrase. It's one thought. It's one, hey, blessed is the poor in spirit. And the poor in spirit will also mourn because their sin. And because they mourn, because they understand their sin, they'll also be gentle because they're spending time with me. Oh, because they're gentle and they understand that they're not self-sufficient, they're also going to hunger for righteousness. They're going to thirst for righteousness. And because of that, they're going to be like it's not 5 different or 10 different or 20 different ideas or different categories of people. Jesus is talking about one specific person, those who are redeemed in the new life. Like, that's what these Beatitudes, this is how Christians, followers of Jesus, should live. This is how we should be identified. Not one section, but all of this section should identify and be seen in our life. That's what he's trying to get at.
Yeah. And then we end up in that, like, blessed are you. And, well, let's talk about blessed for a second, because I think we might not all have the same definition of blessed.
Yeah.
Because, like, how many times, and I'm guilty, I have put it on my Facebook post. I've put it on there. I'm feeling so blessed because, like,
hallelujah, I'm blessed.
Like, this is my month photo dump of all, and I've done it, of all these great things that happened in my life, so I can show it all off to you guys, but I'm not going to show you all the millions of things that I did wrong or my sin, but let me show you these highlight reels. Feeling so blessed. Like, but let's talk about blessed.
Well, we amount blessing in the West to what we are willing to show off to others. See, we don't actually...
When we talk about I'm so blessed, it's all the things I have.
Well, it's not even that. We equate to blessing as trophies in the West.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
Like, and I'm not just saying that as like trophies that we win. I'm talking about trophies that we want to show off to others. Don't mess up your camera now. Sorry. You're okay. What's this? Bada bing, bada boom. Mr. Worldwide. Step in the room. But we don't do that. We don't equate blessing to what Scripture equates blessing to. We equate it to what we're willing. I mean, truthfully, what we're willing to boast in. That's our blessings. And we could talk about how great it is to live on property. Hey, we could talk about how great it is to be at this church. Hey, we can talk about how great it is to have a family. But all we're doing in those moments is really we're saying, hey, look what I got. Yeah. I hope you see it on Instagram and you feel like, man, the princes are doing great. Like,
yeah.
We've talked about this. This is one of the reasons why we don't really post on social media that much about our personal life, because we don't want people who were at our last church or people who are friends with us to be like, man, looks like their life is so much better there. Like, we don't want that, because that's not uplifting to Christ. Like,
yeah. You
know what we'll do? We'll post reels on social media of our podcast because we're talking about real life stuff. But people don't, like, I'm done with trophies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get up on Wednesdays and preach for trophies. I don't show up on Sunday mornings and preach for trophies to tell people how much I'm blessed. I do it because I don't want anybody's blood on my hands. And whether you're headed to hell, you're going to have to get me out of your way to get there.
Yeah.
That's why. But that's so foreign.
Yeah.
Because blessings are so much more. The things that I get to brag about, the things that I get to enjoy. Like, I'm not trying to be negative. I don't care about your monthly photo dump, because I don't want to see your highs. I want to see your lows.
Yeah.
Because your lows tell me more about your character than your highs.
Yeah.
Your lows tell me way more about your relationship with the Lord than your highs do.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
But we get blessings so wrong. You're absolutely right. We've even talked about that in our life group, D-Life, Sunday school. I don't know what it's one of those things. We've even talked about that. Like Psalms chapter 1, blessed is the man. We so much think that it's material blessings, but it's talking about something beyond.
Yeah, it's talking about just your spiritual well-being. Yeah. Having the approval of God, and thus a destiny of delight in communion with the Creator. Mm. It says nothing to do with the things that you acquire or like material things that God gives you. Hold on a moment.
There'll be a nice little jump cut right here, bam, and we'll be in it. Yeah. It's interested. I love what you're saying. I'm also thinking about maybe I shouldn't have filled my kids up full of pizza before we recorded the podcast.
Anyway, it's just like, it has nothing to do with the things that God's giving you. Like, that's what we miss. If I tithe, then I'm going to be blessed. And our mind immediately goes to, oh, he's going to give me more money, or he's going to give me more things that I can rely on. He's going to meet my like physical needs because I do that. Well, yeah, he might, but that's not what we're talking about. We're literally talking about the fact that you get to feel good spiritually. Like, you get to feel closer with the Creator, in community with him.
Yeah.
And that in itself is mercy and grace from God.
Yeah.
Because we do not have to feel good at all in our life because of how dirty, how sinful, how disgusting we are. And we think that we do.
Yeah.
We just think that we should. And that's not that much of a blessing, because I can do whatever I want to feel good.
We're entitled.
Yeah. And so just blessed are those who live in this way. And then we also get something else from God too, that he doesn't have to give us, like an inheritance.
Yep.
And being comforted and just, and when we live in this way, like he ends it with, blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad. He says, even though those things happen, you're going to be blessed.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't leave you in those moments. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. There's always a cost when we deny ourselves, when we make sacrifices, and we follow Jesus' commands.
Yeah.
And there's always this little tug that's like, don't do that, because of what so-and-so. You have a relationship with so-and-so, and if you follow this way, that's probably going to end, or they're probably going to say something to you, or they're probably going to bring you down, or they're, whatever. Or if you do this, everybody at work is going to know that, and you can't sit at lunch with them anymore because they do crude joking and they talk about this and that, and you were a part of that. Yep. And if you follow this way, then you're not going to be a part of that. Like, we sit there and we like dream up, all these things of as to why not. And so I promise, like, I've been there. Following Jesus and being blessed by him surpasses. Like, when we think about the scope of eternity, this is like a little blimp, but we're so ingrained to think about your future. Yep. What do you see yourself in 5 years? Yeah. We go to college, which, don't get me started on what I think about college, but we go to college and we try to set our future up. I mean, what does that matter?
Yeah.
I mean, especially if we're getting close to the end here.
Yeah.
The more of them, like,
yeah. Well, it's because people cannot let go. You just smack it.
They can't let go of control of their own life.
Yep. That's it. It's just, people are more worried about what they're getting out of their walk with Jesus than what Jesus wants to get out of them. Like, Jesus wants to get sin and death and yuck out of your life, but you're more consumed with what blessings you're going to get out of it. Like, we talked about church attendance today at our second service. It was really, really light. Guess what? It's rifle season. And you know what that means? People are going to go worship golden deer out in the woods and not care about their spiritual walk. How many times do we hear somebody say, I don't feel like going to church? Man, if it was all about feeling, I would have been up at this dang place most of the time. That's the thing, we do not understand the Beatitudes, because the Beatitudes, all of them don't revolve around us.
Yeah. Our sin makes us feel shame, and we like to go and hide because of it. Like, you just wonder, like, if Jesus were to just show up and that's it,
Yeah.
how many of you are going to go run and hide?
Yeah.
Well, I was, he ain't going to care.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Yeah.
What are we living for? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking about that today. Like, for some, like, I just can't, I don't understand. Well, I do understand. When I was lost and had no relationship with Jesus, this is what I look like.
Okay.
Because what does it say? This is foolishness to those who are perishing.
Yeah.
It's foolishness. And I'm like, where, you know, like, what
Yeah.
are we doing here?
Yeah. A fool says I'm a good person. I'm not that bad.
Like, how many times, like, from your perspective, you know, you're preaching, you're giving a sermon, and you look out and you just see people who have the face of, like, either I was dragged here or I'm too good to hear this.
Preach at him even harder.
Like,
No.
man. Thunder from down under.
Dude. That was crazy.
Oh, he didn't poop yesterday, so that's
hope the
probably
mics
gonna
pick
be
that
a nice one to change.
So from my perspective, I can tell very quickly who's drug here and who wants to be here, who's indifferent and who's not indifferent, right? I can quickly tell. But I understand that I'm not fighting in those moments. There's people that are indifferent. I'm not fighting against them, but I'm fighting against the spirit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fighting against the spirit that has a hold of them.
And that's why you're so drained and tired when you're done. You're like, dang.
Yeah. If I preach and I feel like I did okay, that was okay. If I preach and I feel that way, I know I was operating in my own flesh. Because it has to take something. It does something to me. It has to take something out of me when I'm relying on God rather than myself.
I think we need to. Well, I think what would be good is we'll see what else the Spirit brings to light as I read through the book of Matthew. Because I continued. I've read all the way up to 6, like finished 5. And there's just so much that we could
I want to talk about the election, but
okay, go ahead.
We don't have time. We don't have time.
Well, just what's your thought?
It's going to be way more than that.
What about the election? Who should care?
It's way more than just who should care. We got to wrap it up. I can smell him.
All right. Who else is wanting to hear Austin's thoughts on the election? Well, by the time this airs and the next one comes out, we're going to be past it.
We can record it tomorrow, and I can release it tomorrow night, the day before everybody votes.
Well, you going to release this one today?
Yeah.
Yeah, we recorded this very late. Normally, we come out with one on Sunday around 2:30 p.m., and we record them on like Monday or Tuesday.
It is Sunday. I need to be at the Sportsplex for the FCA thing.
Yeah, in an hour. So I was very sick. Sickness came through our house this week, and then I got it. But
yep,
I'm better.
Hey, listen. We love you.
We're here.
Be blessed and encouraged. Adios.
Bye, guys.